Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. We are back once again at 10 a.m. to analyze the day's Hindu newspaper and pick out the most important news stories from the mains and from the prelims point of view. I hope all of you have made it a habit to attend these classes live at 10 a.m. so that you can also clarify your doubts and make sure that you can learn from each other as well. Let's see what are the important topics that we have lined up here for you in today's class. These are the topics that we have taken up. From the mains point of view, we have 3 editorial articles. Number 1, the Government of India's helicopter program. This is written in the light that in the past few days there have been 2 incidents related to helicopters partially crashing. So this is a time to relook into India's helicopter program, the helicopters that are made by HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Is there some issue with Indian helicopters? Is there a need to change them, and what can we lose if we don't change those programs? Second, we'll be discussing about the G20 vision for ocean commons in simple terms, the importance of blue economy, what are the countries doing to ensure that their blue economy becomes stronger, what is India doing, and the role that G20 can play. Thirdly, we will be talking about the disqualification conundrum. You can be rest assured that the issue of disqualification of a member of parliament will remain in the news for some weeks now because of what happened with Mr. Rahul Gandhi. So again, there is an article about the disqualification. Is there a need to change that? Is there some loopholes in the disqualification law or not? Then we will be discussing some topics from the prelims point of view. First, Sri Lankan government interestingly has taken a decision to invite some companies from foreign nations to take part in their oil market. Right now, Sri Lanka has only 2 petroleum companies, and now they are inviting other companies also to take part. Then we'll be discussing about autism. There is an article about how to assess autism, different levels of autism. We'll be discussing what are the initiatives Government of India has taken for people suffering from autism. And in the end, we'll be talking about the PPF and Sukanya Samriddhi account. Their interest rates will not go up. Once again, we'll be discussing what exactly are these schemes, what are small saving schemes, how do they work, and how important are they. So these are the important topics that have been lined up here for you. Let's begin without waiting any further with the first topic that we have. The first topic is about the helicopter program. Now, what about the helicopter program? If you have been reading the news, in the past few days, about 10 days or so, there have been 2 incidents. One incident in Mumbai and another incident that happened in Kochi. There have been these 2 incidents where we have seen that 2 helicopters that have been used by the forces have not been working properly. The one in Kochi, soon after the helicopter took off, it had to land. It in fact landed on water. Because it had the capability to float on water, thankfully the people did not lose their lives, they were rescued, crane was called for, and the crane was able to take out the helicopter from the water. Then we also had a similar kind of a case in Kochi. In Kochi, it was the Indian Navy that was trying to fly an helicopter, and this Indian Navy helicopter suddenly lost its balance, it suddenly had to then again land. Now, these 2 incidents happening very close to each other have now kind of signaled that there may be some problem with Indian helicopters. What are these kind of helicopters? These are specific helicopters which are in the category of ALH. ALH here stands for Advanced Light Helicopter. Please understand, helicopters, planes, etc. are of different types. For example, we might have something called advanced combat or light combat helicopters. Those are different. Light combat helicopters would be helicopters that can attack, that can actually shoot some weapons. On the other hand, advanced light helicopters are not helicopters that will take part in any battle. Advanced light helicopters mainly are helicopters that are kept so that the army, the air force, etc., they can survey a certain area, they can actually ensure that there is transportation, there is supply of certain materials. So the one that we are talking about right now, those helicopters are in the category of advanced light helicopter Dhruv. Now, advanced light helicopters are made in India. They are made by HAL. that is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Now you would have seen this, that all the governments, including the Indian government, have been focusing on having light aircrafts. Light helicopters, light aircraft. You all would have heard about Tejas, for example. Tejas is also light combat aircraft. Now the word light here basically signifies the agility of the aircraft. The light aircraft means the weight would be lesser. When you are driving a vehicle which is of lesser weight, obviously it will go faster, obviously it will be much more agile. Just imagine you are driving a bicycle as compared to if you're driving a bulldozer. So if you're driving a bulldozer, how easy or difficult would it be to turn, to take a U-turn, to actually increase or decrease the speed in comparison to if you're riding a lighter vehicle. So lighter helicopters, lighter planes are the way to go forward because they can be maneuvered easily. Also, they are much more suitable for climatic conditions which are not very useful to them. They can also be used for various purposes. They do not require a lot of very advanced machinery to work with them, and that is why countries across the world are focusing on light helicopters. Now, Indian government, as I said, also has been focusing on light advanced helicopters. They are used by not just Air Force. Please remember, even our Indian Army has certain helicopters. There are certain pilots who work in Indian Army as well. Indian Coast Guard also have a lot of these helicopters. Coast Guards, because India has a very long coastline, as you know, and to defend that coastline, to make sure we are keeping an eye on the water nearby us, Indian Coast Guard also has a lot of helicopters. Indian Navy also has many helicopters. So please understand, it's not that only the Air Force will have helicopters. Navy, Army, Coast Guard, all of these have helicopters. Obviously, Air Force will have them in much larger numbers, but Coast Guard, etc. also have them for various purposes. Now, what exactly has happened with these helicopters? The investigation is still going on. Also, it is not important for us right now to remember what exactly was the flaw in this. But as per the article, whenever you have an air crash, it has been found out by studies, over 80% of the instances of any kind of air crash is because of human error. Human error means the pilot may have made some mistake, or it may not be the pilot always. It may be the mechanic, someone who actually repaired the engine beforehand, maybe that went wrong. So it is not the fault of machine 80% of the times as per the articles. It is human fault about 80% of the times. And that is why it is taken very, very, very seriously. Any pilot, before they actually go and handle an aircraft, be it helicopter, be it any kind of aircraft, are given hours and hours and hours of training. Only then they are allowed to actually fly these kind of machines. For various reasons, these machines are extremely expensive. Also, apart from the expense of the machine, human life of a trained person in the army is very, very precious. And that is why all these pilots are given a lot of training before they actually reach that stage. We also have a division in the Government of India called Center for Military Airworthiness and Certification. This is a body which gives licenses to any aircraft, meaning that before an aircraft can be flown by any military personnel in India, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, before they fly any aircraft, that aircraft first has to be given permission by this regulatory body, which is called the Center for Military Airworthiness and Certification. Only then we could have these kind of aircrafts being able to fly. Now, what exactly is the problem here? If our helicopter is crashing, what exactly is the problem? There are three main problems that we have to understand. When a country's aircraft, for example, crashes, when they are not taking part in any defense activity, when it just crashes in normal day-to-day activity, there are three big problems. First big problem that we have, obviously, that is the financial loss. The financial loss, obviously, the aircraft going down, that would hurt the organization. However, this is the least of the worries. We may think, oh, these aircraft, the helicopters are very expensive. If they go down, if they get damaged, that's a financial loss. That is true, but that is not really a worry. A much bigger worry is that loss of life of people who are trained personnel, loss of life of trained military personnel. That is a huge expense and no military wants it. Any government would be ready to pay any money that you ask them in return for someone's life who is a trained military personnel for the government, because they are precious. Only few people in the country, only handful of people in the country have undergone that training that allows them to handle these machines, that allows them to actually run these programs. So the second big loss that we have is the loss of life, which is the life of the trained military personnel which is at stake. Then there's a third problem also. Third problem is what India is facing now, which is the international prestige. Especially when you want to become a weapon exporting nation. If you want to become a weapon exporter, like India now wants to become a weapon exporter, how would it look to other countries when they are placing an order from India and they are seeing, oh, Indian helicopters are crashing in their own country. And the interesting part is, see, when the crash happens, like when you actually talk about the MiG crashes that happen, the reason for MiG crashes, many people say, is they are very old, right? The MiG aircrafts, many of them are of 1980s, so they are very old, they will crash. But the helicopters that have gone down in the last few days, they are very new helicopters. The two helicopters that were reportedly damaged, both these helicopters did not even complete 1,000 hours of flying. They had about 600 to 800 hours of flying. Now 600 to 800 hours of flying is a very new machine. It's a pretty new machine, these helicopters. So that is a cause of concern. It's not that it's an old machine, it is of old technology, it is of new technology. So these three are major problems. First, the financial loss of the machine, which the government is ready to bear. Second, the biggest problem, the loss of military personnel. Thankfully, in these two cases, military personnel life was not lost. So the second part is not true in the last two cases of what happened. The third big loss is international prestige. At a time that we want to become a major weapon exporter, we do not want that. This is where the problem starts. Now, if you actually see India's advanced light helicopter program, and I just want to take you to history. How did it start? When did we start making our own helicopters? So Indian government's HAL, that is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. This is the company that makes helicopters in India for the government. The advanced light helicopter program that we are talking about are those helicopters whose weight is about less than 5 tons. They have multiple roles. Their roles are not to take part in defense activities. Their role is not to take part in attack activities, etc. Their role is mostly to keep an eye for transportation, for supplies, etc. Now, HAL was given the contract to start making these helicopters back in 1984. The sad part is, in India's entire history, whenever we have tried to build any defense equipment within India, especially the HAL, you will always see that there is a long delay for various reasons. There are a lot of reasons that are involved. Some reasons may be that we have to import some parts. For example, earlier when the HAL started this program, the idea was we will import the engines from the other countries, from Western countries. So engines, all these kind of parts, even today, all the aircraft that you think of around the entire world, their engines are made by different companies which are actually responsible for making these aircraft so powerful. So HAL was given the contract in 1984. They had to make it with a German company who would have given them the design, etc. But a lot of problems started. For example, the problem started in 1991 when India had its first economic crisis. Because of 1991 economic crisis, Government of India did not have enough money for funding, so this program kind of stalled. Then in 1998, India conducted the Pokhran test. A lot of sanctions were imposed on us. Again, at that time, whatever help or whatever requirement we had from Western countries, all of that stopped. Because of which, all these initiatives taken by the Government of India have been seeing a delay. Finally, the HAL was able to make the first flight of Dhruv, that is the light helicopter made in India, in 2007. It was in 2007 only that we were able to finally make this helicopter. We started in 1984, we actually were able to successfully conclude the program in 2007. This huge delay is because of all these issues that have been going around. Also, after that in 2011, HAL made partnership with other organizations as well. In 2011, HAL made a partnership with Israel Aerospace Industry, said that they were jointly now making a helicopter called Dhruv. As of 2020, Dhruv helicopters have even been exported to other countries. Right now, our Indian Coast Guard uses the Dhruv helicopters in large numbers. We also export it to other countries such as Nepal, Mauritius, Maldives. All of them have gotten aircrafts or these helicopters from India. So as I was talking about the third point, when these kind of accidents happen, this is a major problem for that country which is trying to increase its export of these equipment, because it would not leave a good impression on the other countries. Recently, very recently, that is in Feb, last month only, India delivered these helicopters to Mauritius as well. So India still has been exporting it. I'll give you one example of how these helicopters export from India have harmed India. So this news is of 2008 and 9. In 2008-9, India signed a contract with a South American nation called Ecuador. The contract was that HAL will supply them with helicopters. 7 helicopters were exported. Out of these 7 helicopters, very soon about 4 of them crashed. Within the first few years, 4 of these 7 helicopters crashed. And when 4 of these crashed, Ecuador obviously cancelled the order for further helicopters. They said we don't want any more helicopters after that. There was a lot of debate between HAL and Ecuador. Ecuador kept on saying that the helicopters crashed because of mechanical error. HAL kept on saying that no mechanical error did not exist. It was the pilots who made a mistake. But still, these kind of incidents have harmed any country's image when it comes to exporting weapons. Look at what is happening between Ukraine and Russia. Now the entire world is seeing that the Russian weapons may not be as effective as the world thought. And that is why Russia's weapon export industry is now being harmed. Many countries are having second thoughts about Russian weapons, including India. So we do not want that with India, and that is why it is time that the investigation for this kind of an crash goes on at a very high scale. Investigation has already started from the side of the government. There has been a team formed, and the team that has been formed has people from army as well, because army also uses these helicopters. So we might see what exactly is the cause. Still right now we don't know the exact cause of what caused these helicopters to actually crash. This was our first article to be discussed for the day. Let me take up a few questions before we go ahead. Okay, I have a question. Is there no other authority organization producing aircrafts? No, right now HAL is the only one that is producing these helicopters in India for the government. Then Ashu is saying, is there any difference between ALH, MK3, MK4? Okay, so basically ALH is the kind of helicopter. ALH is Advanced Light Helicopter. Advanced Light Helicopter has various versions, like you have 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, right? Similarly, this ALH has many versions. So the MK4 version, for example, Mach 4 version is a higher version of MK3, which was a higher version of MK2. That is how it works. Okay. Then I have a question from Kumud. Is it any authority who investigate these crashes? So basically, when there is a military kind of a crash that happens, it is the government of India that forms a committee of people within the committee only. There are different countries that have different kind of authorities. For example, US, etc. have an authority for civil aviation crashes. But when it is a crash of a plane or aircraft or helicopter within the military, the government will make an ad hoc committee for that. Shashank, as I told you, the cause is still not clear. Investigation is going on. So I don't have any breaking news for you that this is why the helicopter crashed. As and when I add the news, I'll let you know. Okay. Then I have Abraham saying, which ministry will control? There is no control as such. The government of India forms a committee, so they will decide. It's not necessary that any committee has to be under a ministry. If a committee is formed and they are told to investigate a matter, give the report to the government, it is not necessary that they have to work under a certain ministry. Okay. Shamla is saying why HAL only is doing this helicopter, because HAL is the government company. They have the expertise. They are the ones who are working in this area. Government of India does not have this kind of a company that works in this area. There may be other private organizations that may be coming up in this area, but right now it is the HAL only. ALH, I already told you what does it stand for. ALH is Advanced Light Helicopter. Let me write it here for you. Advanced Light Helicopter, that is ALH. Perfect. Let's move on then. The next important article that we have here is about something called Ocean Commons and their focus on economy of the ocean. There is a very interesting phrase that many of you might have heard of time and time again, something called blue economy. I'm sure many of you would have heard this phrase. Blue economy. Now, what exactly is blue economy? How does it work? Let's try and understand this. See, blue economy in simple terms means any country, especially those countries that have a long shoreline, they take advantage of the water body nearby them to extract resources from them, to ensure that that water body is used for various purposes, including mineral exploration, including fishery, including all these navigation facilities, etc. Sustainable use of water and water bodies nearby a country is referred to as blue economy. Now, what has happened is in the past few decades, almost every country has exploited so many resources from their land that every country is now focusing on the water. Because almost all countries now believe that the land resources are coming to an end. Also, when you exploit resources from the land, there is a lot more pollution that results into, or that actually is the result as compared to when you extract these kind of minerals from the ocean. So now major countries around the world, be it China, Japan, US, even India, France, all of them are now focusing towards the water to see what kind of resources they can extract from the water. And this has now, as you know, has started a new struggle with the big nations now coming face to face with each other. China wanting the control of the entire South China Sea, USA now having their big aircraft carriers in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, always taking around somewhere, because every country right now understands the importance of blue economy. The G20 summit right now can be a platform where India can take a lead, where all the countries can collaborate rather than fight on how to make the best use of oceans. As per the author, the G20 countries together account for 45% of the world's coastlines. 21% of the exclusive economic zone EEZ belongs to this G20 nation, and there is no wonder that you will see most of the developed nations, most of the rich nations are the ones that are close to some water body, that have a big coastline that they can take advantage of. Take example of China, take example of Russia, Japan, US, Canada, Australia. All these countries are examples enough to prove that when you have a long coastline, you have a great advantage. On the other hand, the opposite is also true. Look at the Central Asian nations. The Central Asian nations that we have are those nations that have a lot of resources. Look at Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc. They have so many resources. They have uranium, gold, etc. But still, they are very, very poor. The reason being that how exactly will they export? They don't have the coastline, they don't have the access to the sea, so they are not able to export all those material as they could have. They can only export to those countries which share their border, like Russia or China. When you can only export to one country, you cannot ask for a higher price. If these countries tell Russia that we will give you uranium or gold, etc. at a higher price, Russia will say, okay, then don't give it to me. Because now Central Asian nations don't have any other country to export because they don't have access to water. So access of water is extremely important for this reason only. That your exports, your global standing is all dependent on access to water. We also understand this. Recently, Prime Minister Modi made a statement. To me, blue chakra in India's flag represents the potential of the ocean economy. Now, please listen to me very, very carefully. This quote that I am sharing with you, the quote made by the Prime Minister, I'll repeat this. He said to me, the blue chakra in India's flag represents the potential of the ocean economy. Now, these kind of quotes are extremely, extremely important for you. Not for the prelims, but for the mains examination. For two reasons. One reason is UPSC can just give this quote as a question. They will give this quote, full stop, elaborate. So now you should know who said this, and you have to elaborate the importance of ocean economy, etc., how ocean economy can be good for India. Otherwise, in case, let's say, the UPSC did not ask this in the question, then you yourself can mention such a quote while you're answering a question about blue economy in the context of India. If there's a question about the importance of ocean, the importance of blue economy, then you yourself can mention such a quote, which can actually ensure that your answer becomes much, much better. That is why these kind of quotes are important. So whenever you are reading about quotes, and I know many of your students actually try and remember some quotes, which is a good practice. But the only advice I have is, if you are someone who tries to remember certain quotes, then don't just remember quotes of old leaders or historians. Also look at quotes of the present leaders who have said something very recently. That also becomes extremely important. For example, the quote by our ex-Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he said that you can choose your friends but not your neighbors. This quote has been asked by UPSC many, many times. You can choose your friends but not your neighbors. And this is a quote that many people can also use in the examination. So when you get these kind of quotes, please make it a point to remember them and try and use them as well when the time comes in the mains examination where you can actually mention it. Now, the author also says that realizing this, the government of India has taken many initiatives to take advantage of the ocean. The author gives certain examples. We have the Sagarmala initiative to promote ports in India and nearby India and our neighboring countries. We have been focusing on shipbuilding as well. Domestic shipbuilding industry has been given a push by the government. We have the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, under which the government of India has been trying to encourage the fishing industry. India, as you know, exports a lot of fish, prawns, and a lot of seafood, which is in a lot of demand in various nations across the world. So government has been trying to encourage them as well. We have the Sagar Manthan dashboard that tracks vessels, meaning that all those merchant vessels mainly that are floating around India, we have to keep an eye on them. Ever since, especially, we had the Mumbai terror attacks. If you remember the Mumbai terror attacks, the terrorists came by water. So since then, the government has realized the importance of tracking each and every boat, each and every ship which is nearby India. So we track that as well. We also have the Deep Ocean Mission. The Deep Ocean Mission explores the deep ocean resources in our own exclusive economic zone. The government of India also has CRZ, Coastal Regulation Zone, that talks about what activities are allowed in coastal areas, what are not allowed in coastal areas. And the government of India has even banned single-use plastic to make sure that the marine environment remains much more pristine. In the past few years, you might have seen when you go to beaches, etc., a lot of beaches have become more strict as compared to earlier about what is allowed, what is not allowed. Now, the blue economy, again, is something that the entire world is focusing on. It is not just India. India realizes its importance, but so do the other countries. You can look at how China has been working, how aggressive they have been in claiming the entire South China Sea as their territory. You can see Russia trying to explore the Arctic as much as possible. There are so many Russian ships, ice-breaking ships that go into the Arctic to explore oil and gas. All of these are examples of how the entire world realizes the importance of blue economy and have been trying to exploit as many resources as possible. This is a graphic from UN itself. You go to UN website and you will see this, how blue economy contributes to us. It can be a source of renewable energy. It also can improve life of the people living by near the oceans. It can help us fight the environment, because when you talk about global exports, exporting by waterways is by far the most environmental friendly way of exporting anything. It is much more friendly to the environment as compared to exporting by air or exporting by road, etc. That is why all the nations prefer exporting by water. Also, it creates many jobs, ends hunger. It also is a major source of nutrition. Seafood, those who consume it know it's a major source of nutrition as well. Now, I want to share some numbers with you especially with respect to India and India's blue economy. Please try and remember these, at least some of them. For example, if you look at India's coastline is about close to 7,500 kilometers long. It has about 12 major and 200 minor ports. Our blue economy supports 95% of India's business through transportation and is a part of 4% of our GDP. India's shipping industry is also expanding around the entire world. I don't know how many of you know this. India is home to one of the world's biggest ship breaking industry. Do you know that? There's a huge ship breaking industry in India as well. Do you know where it is exactly? What is the ship breaking center in India? Where exactly do the ships come from all around the world? Where in Gujarat? Gujarat, and where in Gujarat? Okay, don't Google. Okay, I'll give you this homework. You can tell me in the comment section after the video ends. There's a specific place in Gujarat, very, very famous for ship breaking industry. All around the world, we have the ships coming into Gujarat just to get broken in the scrap so that then they can be sold. Don't Google it right now. You can tell me later on in the comment section. I'll read those. Then we also have the potential of using the ocean for producing offshore energy, for marine biotechnology, and it is also in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goal number 14, which says life below water. This is where the government can take advantage of blue economy. All these are advantages specifically for India. Apart from that, mineral deposits, mineral exploration also has become a major attraction for nations around the world. All of you, I'm sure, might have heard of something called polymetallic nodules. Polymetallic nodules basically are kind of big ball-like substances. They are compounds. They are found in the seabed, in the ocean bed, and they are filled with a lot of very important, very precious metals. Many countries have been trying to extract as many polymetallic nodules as possible. They contain a lot of very important elements, including nickel, cobalt, iron, manganese, etc. They are worth millions and billions of dollars, and that is why nations around the world, such as India, China, etc., have been trying to explore this part of the ocean as well. So we are not just exploring fishing, we are not just exploring other activities, we are also exploring polymetallic nodules, mainly for manganese and other types of mineral resources. Apart from that, fishermen also contribute a large part in our economy. Indian coastal economy sustains about 4 million fishermen, means 40 lakh. India is the second largest fish producing nation in the entire world. A lot of it is exported, so it is also a major source of foreign exchange for India. Indian government has already established something called the Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund in 2018-19 to help all the fishermen with their needs, to help them with the knowledge about how to catch better fish, etc. Not just this, we are also trying to educate them about sustainable fishing practices. See, fish is a resource that if you exploit too early, obviously you are ruining yourself, and this has happened. If you look at, basically go to the coastal areas of Tamil Nadu, a lot of these areas in the coastal areas of Tamil Nadu are almost over with fish. There is no fish, and that is why they have to go so far off from their coast to catch any fish, and that is how they enter the Sri Lankan waters, because they have exploited the fishing resources so much. And this is what the government of India has been focusing on. All of these are in line with the government of India's focus on blue economy. Please remember, blue economy is one of those topics that are very relevant. Please do read about it in detail for the mains point of view especially. There are some problems that still exist. Yes, we do have a lot of ports in India, but still for a country of India's size, we can still make a lot more ports. We have only 12 major ports in India. Those can be increased. We have a problem of overfishing, as I told you. See, fish, etc. obviously would be sold in the market. If they are very exotic fish, then it's a different matter altogether. But usual fish are told as per their weight. So if there's a very small fish that has been caught, it would not be worth a lot in the market. But if you catch small fish, if you don't allow them to grow up and reproduce, the population of fish will automatically go away. So to maintain a sustainable population of fish, it is extremely important to ensure that the fishing activities are sustainable. We also have a problem of marine pollution. A lot of industries, etc., discharge their waste. The control over marine pollution is not very strict in countries such as India. Issues of climate change still remain, because of which we are seeing a lot of countries actually facing this issue of rising sea level. And the India-Sri Lanka fishing conflict, as we discussed, it has a lot of reasons behind it, but one of the main reasons is because we have overly exploited fishes in our water. Our fishermen are being forced to go far off and mistakenly enter the Sri Lankan waters. That is also the problem of fishing conflict between the two sides. This was about the Blue Economy article. Chico is asking, where does ocean common falls beyond EEZ? Yes, it is beyond EEZ. That is called the high sea. And that comes under jurisdiction of UN clause, UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Okay. Then Kishan is saying allocated by International Seabed Authority. So these areas, more than International Seabed Authority, they are allocated by UN clause, United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. Then let me see others. Teja has a good question. Will India have EEZ and Andaman and Lakshadweep Islands up to 200 nautical miles? Absolutely yes. This is in fact the importance of islands. If this is our coastline and we have an island here, let's say Andaman Nicobar, from there 200 nautical mile also would be our exclusive economic zone. So whichever islands you have, from those islands also 200 nautical mile becomes your exclusive economic zone. Many of you don't know what is exclusive economic zone. So basically the idea is, if this is India's coastline, from our coastline up to 200 nautical miles. 200 nautical miles, if we convert this into kilometers, this will be close to 370 kilometers. So the idea is, in this zone, in this water, India has a right to explore all the mineral resources that we can. So there's a mineral resource found in 200 nautical mile area within our shoreline, that will be India's. Converted to kilometer, about 370 kilometer. That is how it works. Perfect. Let's move on then. The next article that we have here again is about disqualification conundrum. You have already seen a lot of articles written on it. And as I said, this is a topic that shall remain in the news most probably for the coming weeks or so, after the disqualification order has been issued for the Congress leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, from Lok Sabha. We have discussed about it earlier as well, how Mr. Rahul Gandhi was disqualified from the Lok Sabha's membership, because he was sentenced to 2 years of jail by a Surat court in a defamation case. Now his his conviction has been suspended for some time. He has been given the bail also, but even then his disqualification order has already been issued. Now what exactly is this? How can exactly it work? Let's try and understand this. See, the problem here is, whatever has happened with Mr. Gandhi in this case, it is as per the law. So no one can argue that what happened to him is against the law. Whatever activities or whatever proceedings happened, let's say he went to the court gave him the punishment of 2 years. So it's not like the punishment maximum could only be 1 year and the judge specially gave him a 2-year punishment. That is not the case. The punishment in this case of defamation can be up to 2 years, so that is why he was given punishment up to 2 years, number one. Secondly, the Representation of People Act, as we discussed under Section 8, says that if a legislator has been given punishment of 2 years or more, will be disqualified. So that also is as per the law. So whatever has happened is not against the law. No law has been broken. Let's first get that very clear. Now, since no law has been broken as such, the supporters of Mr. Gandhi or supporters of Congress can't really say that no, this should not happen, this is wrong. They can argue that the law should be changed, that is fine. But they can't argue that someone went against the law. This is, whatever has happened is as per the law. So the debate is not about what happened is right or wrong. The debate is mainly about, should we change the law or not? This is what the article is also about. So after this conviction happened, there was a PIL also filed in the court. The PIL said that defamation should not lead to these kind of disqualifications. Members of Parliament should only be disqualified for very serious offences. This is a PIL filed in the court, but again, this has not been heard so far. Now, as you know, and we have discussed this earlier also, the disqualification happened under Representation of People Act of 1951 under Section 8. Now, this Section 8, and we have discussed this earlier also, has subsections, total of 4. Fourth one has been taken out. However, this subsection 4 of Section 8 said that even if a member of parliament has been given a 2-year punishment or more than 2 years punishment, the member of parliament will still get 90 days, 90. 90 days should be given so that the member of parliament can appeal. If an appeal is filed, as soon as the appeal was filed, the disqualification did not happen. So basically, in reality, subsection 4 of Section 8 allowed the members of parliament 90 days to file an appeal. If appeal was filed, that was equivalent to a stay order only. But in 2013, as you know, in the Lily Thomas case, this subsection 4 was taken away by the Supreme Court. And the story, the interesting part is, as all of you know, when this order, the Lily Thomas judgment came in, there was the Congress government. Congress government actually brought an ordinance saying that no, we are bringing back the same subsection 4. Do you remember this? When the Lily Thomas case of 2013 took away the subsection 4, Congress government at that point of time had introduced an ordinance to say that no, we are bringing back subsection 4. Why? Because a lot of their alliance partners would have been disqualified. And at that time, it was Mr. Rahul Gandhi himself who said, no, this should not be the case. It was Mr. Rahul Gandhi who had actually torn apart the ordinance in the media. He said, no, this is a piece of garbage. This ordinance should not be brought by the government. Whatever the court has done is right. Now, the same is coming back to bite him. He had the opportunity, his government had the opportunity to overturn the judgment of the court, to bring back subsection 4 that may have saved him, but that does not exist now. Now the argument is, and in the Lily Thomas case also, the government of India at that time tried to defend this section 8 subsection 4. The government of India did try to defend it. What is the government's argument? See, government can't give an argument that we support criminals. So how does a government give the argument that we should have this kind of a law? They can't openly say we support criminals. So the government argument is number one. Government says most of the time when the government is formed, most governments only have a majority of a few MPs or MLAs. So most of the governments, for example, only have a majority of 2 or 3 MPs or MLAs. So the government is saying that what happens is, if even 1 or 2 people are disqualified, the entire government can fall down. And if the entire government falls down, in that case, it would lead to a lot of issues in the country. The government will not be stable. It would be an unstable government, and that is why we should not allow, even for very small offences, that disqualification may happen. The government of India's argument is to stop the unstable majority or to stop the unstable nature of the government from falling down. We should allow people to continue in the parliament unless there's a very, very serious crime. That was a government argument number one. Second argument of the government was that if the disqualification happens immediately, as happened in Mr. Rahul Gandhi's case, then the election commission will call for a by-election in Wayanad, for example. Now let's take this example. Let's say Election Commission of India tomorrow conducts a by-election in Wayanad seat from where Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been contesting. Someone else wins the election, and after 2 months, Supreme Court, let's say, overturns the judgment of Surat Court and says, no, Rahul Gandhi is not guilty. Then what will happen? As per the law right now, if Rahul Gandhi now goes to higher court and is considered as not guilty, if someone else has already taken his seat, then he will not get his seat back. He will have to fight the elections again. This is also a big problem, that you cannot get your seat back if someone else has already taken your seat. These are the 2 problems that the government had. The government had already said that no, we cannot have a situation where the government may fall down just because of 1 or 2 members. And secondly, this problem Someone else might take their seat. What if the decision is overturned? That has still not been resolved. Now there is one interesting issue that has happened with current Member of Parliament of Lakshadweep. We have discussed this earlier as well. Mr. Mohammad Faisal, he is a Lok Sabha member from Lakshadweep. Now some time back he was given a punishment of 10 years in a case. Obviously his membership of Lok Sabha went away. When his membership of Lok Sabha went away, by-elections were called, but he quickly went to High Court and High Court stayed his conviction. So his disqualification had to be given back to him. Supreme Court also asked Election Commission, don't conduct elections on his constituency, don't conduct by-elections. But even right now, officially, his membership of Lok Sabha has not been restored. Why? Let's try and understand this. Let's take a very simple example. Let's assume that on 10th of Jan, Mr. Faisal, or let's say Mr. Gandhi was disqualified. Okay? Let's assume this, on 10th of Jan he was disqualified. Now he goes to court and Supreme Court, let's say on 15th of April, let's say overturns the decision. Now the issue is, when the Supreme Court overturns the decision, obviously he will get the seat back. But the question is, now that he gets the seat back, will he start getting salary from 10th Jan onwards only, or will he start getting salary from 15th April only? Meaning that his restoration that will happen, the restoration will be considered from the date that Supreme Court overturns the decision, or would he want that no, restoration should happen from the earlier date? The date when I was disqualified, I want all the salary. This is still not clear in the law. That would your status be restored from that day? Would you get all your allowances, salary, etc. from that day or not? That is still not clear. And because of that confusion, Mr. Faisal's Lok Sabha membership has officially still not been given back to him. Although the Supreme Court has said that he should be restored, but even then it has not been given back, because again there are a lot of loopholes in the law that still exist. There are some possible solutions in this case as per the author. Number one, the author says maybe we should wait for the Election Commission, or the Election Commission should rather wait, not conduct by-elections unless the higher court has also disqualified the Member of Parliament. Yes, you can disqualify the Member of Parliament, but don't call for by-elections in his seat. Wait for some time, wait for him to go to higher judiciary and then decide. This kind of a solution has been suggested because again the problem is the same, and it's a very common thing. It can happen. If Rahul Gandhi after 2 months gets a stay order from Supreme Court, and within these 2 months, if let's say some by-election has happened in his constituency, someone new has come up, then what would happen to that seat? Would Mr. Rahul Gandhi get his seat back or not? There is no clarity. In fact, the same happened with the late ex-Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. Jayalalitha, when she was the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, you would know she was an MLA. She was disqualified because she was sentenced to prison by a court. So she had to leave her seat. So by-elections happened in her seat and someone else won the election. Now she went to High Court, higher court overturned the judgment. So she had to contest her election once again to win a seat. Not that she was given back her seat originally. So there is an issue here that still exists. It has not been clarified so far. Apart from that, there are important Supreme Court judgments from the prelims point of view, which I would advise you to remember in this issue. We have the 2002 Union of India versus ADR, Association of Democratic Reforms case. It was in this case that the Supreme Court said everyone contesting election, be it municipal election, state elections or parliament elections, they have to give their criminal records. They have to clarify what exactly is their criminal record. That information should be available to the public, which is the case now. In 2005, the Supreme Court said MP, MLA should be subject to disqualification from contesting election if they are convicted to 2 years or more. This was in the 2005 case. This is the same kind of a law under which Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been now disqualified. Lily Thomas case I have already discussed. I am seeing in the chat some people asking what is Lily Thomas case. I would highly advise you to see the CNA videos of Saturday and Sunday that when we did discuss the Lily Thomas case in its detail. You can get to know about it from there. 2015, Supreme Court also said that disclosure of criminal cases of candidate at the time of filing nomination paper was imperative. There is no exception. Everyone has to ensure that they do give or detail of what is their criminal record. Although it's a different matter altogether that our population, usually when people go to vote, they don't even look at the criminal cases. How many of you can tell me that have you ever checked your background, the criminal cases of your candidate before voting? No. We just check, oh, what is the surname? Same surname as me. Good. He should be a good candidate. Let's vote for him. Or do you say, which party do I have to support? You just go ahead and vote for that person. Although their criminal record, how much property they have, all of that is easily available on the Election Commission website, but we hardly actually go through that. And don't even tell me, so sir, it is so difficult, how can we find out? You all are champions of Google. If you really want to find out something, you easily find it out. But just because you don't want to find out about your candidate, you don't find it out. So this excuse that no, it is so difficult, we don't know where this is, this excuse cannot work. You are online 24/7. You know everything online, how to find everything. So you can find this also, just that if you want to, only then you can. But mostly people do not want to. Anyway, now the question one more is, can the disqualification be removed? Is there any exception? The answer is yes, disqualification can be removed. For example, the Election Commission and the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has the power to stay sentence and also conviction of the person. So if it does happen, if the Supreme Court comes in, they may obviously be able to reverse the conviction. So Supreme Court can do that in any case. But interestingly, even Election Commission has this power under Representation of People Act. Section 11 of the Act says, Election Commission may record reasons and remove or reduce the period of the person's disqualification. And it has happened in the past. So Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who has been disqualified for 2 + 6 years, 8 years from fighting election, if the Election Commission of India wants, they may reduce it as well. They have the power to do that. They have done this in the past in some cases. So it's not necessary that if the courts don't side with him, that he will also already be disqualified for 8 years. That is not always true. The Election Commission has the power to come in, but it depends would they want to do that or not. That brings us from the prelims perspective news stories. The ones that we discussed so far were mainly from the mains point of view. Now we have from the prelims point of view a few news stories. The first one that we have here is Sri Lankan government announcing that they are inviting some global oil companies to operate in Sri Lanka. Now so far in Sri Lanka there are only 2 oil companies that operate. When I say oil companies, it means a company that have petrol pumps, etc., that sell oil to the common people. So in Sri Lanka right now there are only 2 companies that operate in the oil sector. First is their own company, that is Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. This is the first one. And second one, as you should be happy to know, is the Indian Oil Corporation. So these are right now the 2 big companies or the 2 major companies in Sri Lanka that sell oil. One is their own government company, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, and the second is the Indian company, Indian Oil Corporation. Now what has happened is Sri Lanka is inviting 3 other companies as well. Why? Their logic is if we have more companies, competition will increase and the price may fall down. The 3 other companies they are inviting are Sinopec, United Petroleum, and RM Parks. United Petroleum is an Australian company. RM Parks is an American company. Sinopec, you might think it is a Singapore-based company, but no, it is not a Singapore company. It is a Chinese company actually. So Sinopec is China. So there are 3 companies that they have invited, one from China, one from Australia, one from USA, to come in and start operating in the oil sector of Sri Lanka. So far there were only 2, one Sri Lankan company, one Indian company. The reason being they think that it would increase the competition and maybe reduce the oil prices. Now, is India happy with this? Difficult to say, not very happy obviously. since we were the only foreign company working in Sri Lanka's oil sector, so we thought that we have been given this chance or we have been given this status. Now that other companies are coming in, India has not criticized it, but India obviously is not happy. However, on the other hand, India does have some other arrangements with Sri Lanka where we are working. All of you, for example, would know there is something called Trincomalee oil tank farms in Sri Lanka. What is this? So basically, at the time of the British, when the British were in Sri Lanka, they had made certain refueling stations in the Trincomalee port, which are called Trincomalee oil tank farms. So basically what happened was, at the time of Second World War, the British thought that they should be able to store some petroleum in the port of Sri Lanka, so that if they want to refuel some petroleum, they can. Those are called Trincomalee oil tank farms. They are very, very old. Now India with Sri Lanka wants to redesign them, wants to help Sri Lanka in making all these oil tank farms working once again, so that their problem of oil can become better. As you know, when Sri Lanka was going through this economic crisis since 2020, the oil prices in Sri Lanka increased considerably. There was an increase of 35 to 40% in the oil prices of Sri Lanka, because of which Sri Lanka right now is looking at methods of how to reduce the oil prices and also how to increase the supply. In fact, shortage of oil in Sri Lanka had hit such a bad level that people were given a quota that in 1 week you can only have this much petrol and diesel, not more than that. So Sri Lanka does not want that situation to come back again. This Trincomalee oil tank farm has 99 storage tanks. The capacity is 12,000 kiloliter each of them. Now India Sri Lanka had an agreement on this long time back. It was in 1987 when India Lanka Accord was signed, when you would remember Rajiv Gandhi from our side, when he was the Prime Minister, he had signed this accord where India tried to mediate in the civil war. In the same civil accord, we had said that we will help them out without any issue. We will help them in restoring this Trincomalee oil tank farm. But the work on this has been very, very slow. In 2003, Indian Oil Corporation set up its subsidiary in Sri Lanka that has been working there. This new agreement under India and Sri Lanka, under this agreement, we are helping Sri Lanka to revive other tanks as well. Out of the 99 tanks, Indian Oil Corporation runs 15 of these tanks. Sri Lanka wants the other tanks also to be run and to be operated by the Indian Oil Corporation. If you look at the map of Sri Lanka, this is where Trincomalee is. This is the Colombo port. It is the largest port in Sri Lanka. It has the most traffic. This is the famous or infamous Hambantota port made by Chinese money, now on Chinese port or on Chinese lease for 99 years. There are other ports also, the port of Gaul as you see here. Then there are some minor ports as well that Sri Lanka has. 4 major ports and other minor ports that Sri Lanka right now operates. Now, as I told you, this is an important deal for India specifically. It ensures that India remains in good relationship with Sri Lanka as a maritime neighbor. India wants oil storage facility in Sri Lanka to ensure that Sri Lanka is not dependent on countries such as China, for example. We don't want that from tomorrow onwards, if China tries to interfere in Sri Lanka once again, we don't want Sri Lanka to be in such a situation that they are entirely dependent on China for their oil supply. This is why we have been trying to focus on the Trincomalee oil tank farm. Let's move on then. The next important article from the prelims point of view is about autism. Now, as you know, autism is a disease that has now become, I don't want to say the word famous, but autism is a disease that we talk about much more now as compared to, let's say, 20 years back. A lot more movies, etc., a lot more serials are being made about it, so people are much more aware about autism as a problem. ASD stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. It is a situation in which a human being is not able to communicate properly. The behavior, the interactions are not really in control of that person's. That is why people suffering from ASD have a lot of problem in their day-to-day activities. Again, please remember, ASD does not mean that they might not have the same mental ability as others. people suffering from ASD also have a very smart brain. They have been able to achieve a lot of things. And many people suffering from ASD have been working in professional field. So it's not that they are not able to learn or read or anything like that. It's more of a problem where you are not able to behave properly. You're not able to communicate yourself properly. That is how this ASD actually affects a person. Because ASD again is not a very widespread disease so far, it is not very easy to diagnose. It is a disease that has been misunderstood, that has not been diagnosed well, and that is why countries around the world, including India, many doctors still are not able to understand if a child has been suffering from autism. Especially in our societies where these kind of diseases are not really seen as real diseases. If you understand this, see, if let's say someone tells you that my child is not behaving properly, your answer would not be, is he suffering from autism? Your answer would be, oh, maybe he's very rude, your child doesn't have good manners, you should teach your child how to be more disciplined. But we'll not understand that maybe the problem is not discipline, the problem is not something like this, the problem is a much bigger problem. It is a proper disease that around the world people actually talk about. So it's not something that we can ignore as we have done in many years. Now there are different phrases or different levels of autism right now. There are 3 levels depending upon how bad the situation is and how much help the person needs. Level 1 autism means person with autism that has some social challenges and needs certain help, but can do a lot of daily activities without anyone help as well. Then there's level 2, when person needs more support, communication becomes very hard, they can't communicate, they can't form a proper sentence. Then there's level 3, where the person needs a highest form of support and they avoid interacting with others, they may indulge in violent behavior as well. All these are problems that people suffering from autism especially are facing in this case. As per the article, there are certain tests that are conducted to actually identify whether a child or a person has been suffering from autism or not. There is a test called Modified Checklist for Autism in Toddlers. It has certain questions for children from 16 to 30 years of age. India also has something called Assessment for Autism, Scale for Assessment of Autism, to see what is the level of autism. Children suffering from autism find it extremely difficult to go to normal schools, so there are special schools that are made for them. There are special types of office places that are made for them. That is why the government of India has realized this, ensuring that the people suffering from this kind of a disease are given some special treatment. There are various initiatives taken at the global and at the national level. For example, there is a UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It includes autism as well. Even in India, we have a law called Right of Person with Disability Act that also talks about reservation of people suffering from these kind of diseases. Autism in India is considered as a kind of disability. Autism spectrum disorder, that is ASD, which was ignored earlier, this now has been made a part of the list of disabilities that are recognized by the government of India. In 2014, WHO adopted a resolution saying comprehensive coordinated efforts for management of autism spectrum disorder. So autism is not just a problem in India, but in many nations across the world, because it is still misunderstood, misdiagnosed. That is why autism is still so hard to treat right now. The last news that we have is from the front page of the Hindu newspaper, according to which the government of India may not increase the interest rates for PPF, that is Public Provident Fund, or Sukanya Samriddhi account. Now, from this news, I don't want you to remember the interest rate or the name of the scheme. From this news, what I want you to understand is something called small saving schemes. Small saving scheme. Now, please understand something. The government of India runs a lot of small saving schemes, under which the government gives options to people to invest their savings at a fixed rate of interest, so that they can be assured how much money will they get back. Right now, let's say if you have some money, You can either store it in the bank that will give you a savings bank account rate of interest. You can invest it in the market. If you invested in the market, let's say if you invested in the stock market mutual fund, the return that you will get is not fixed. You might get a very high return, you might get a very low return. There is nothing in between. Then there are options of FD, let's say fixed deposit, etc. When you go to fixed deposit, etc., it is taxable. The interest that you get will be taxed. So if you are still looking for some other options to invest, that is where the government has certain options called small savings scheme. There are a lot of these small savings schemes under which the government decides what will be the rate of interest, and the government tries to change that rate of interest after some time. This rate of interest is the one that we are talking about. Now, I want you to understand a few details about the small savings scheme because it is important. There are a total of 12 small savings schemes from the government. Any money that comes in from the small savings schemes goes to a specific account called National Small Savings Fund. This is a fund which the government of India uses to store all that money. This has become even more important during the COVID-19 pandemic, where people had to save their money and they did not have options. Small savings scheme are under 3 categories mainly. There are a total of 12, but there are 3 categories. First category, postal deposits. Second category, savings certificate. And third category, social security schemes. For example, Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, PPF, Senior Citizen Savings Scheme are all part of social security schemes. Then National Savings Certificate, Kisan Vikas Patra are part of savings certificate. So there are 3 categories of small saving schemes. Total number of schemes are 12. Please do remember that. That is important. Also, the interest rates are revised by the government on a quarterly basis. So because the new quarter is starting 1st of April, so the government will announce the rates again. This is why the article has come in. That a new quarter has come in, our government will be announcing the rates soon, so we expect that the rates will not be increased once again. The rates are reviewed by the Ministry of Finance, please remember. Also remember name of one committee called Shamla Gopinath Committee in 2010. Shamla Gopinath Committee had said that small savings scheme should be market linked interest rate, meaning that the interest rate should be linked with market, how the market is doing. Government should not fix it, it should be interest rate fixed on the market, but that has not been accepted by the government. The government decided the rate. That is a small savings schemes which you must remember. This brings us to the end of today's session, today's discussion. You do have one homework where you have to tell me in the comment section about one of the largest ship-breaking industries in India. Tell me in the comment section. There are a couple of questions here for you. Number 1, examine the challenges and opportunities for India's blue economy and suggest innovative strategies for sustainable development of the sector. Second, the current defamation law leaves a lot to the interpretation of the respective judges. Do you agree? Critically analyze. Thank you so much for joining in right on time. Please make sure you make it a habit. Join right at 10 a.m. so that you don't miss anything. As soon as the session ends, move over to our Telegram channel to attend the quiz based on these topics. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. once again with tomorrow's Hindu newspaper. Thank you so much. Have a good day ahead. Jai Hind.